Choose from these two pictures. Which one looks the tastiest to you? For the first one, raise your hand. Okay. For the second one, raise your hand. Okay. What if I told you that the first one contains sodium and preservatives that are harmful to your body and the second one doesn't? Would you still pick the same? Okay. Well, the American diet, as we all know, is rich in saturated fat, food preservatives and colors, and is jacked up on caffeine, alcohol, and high fructose corn syrup. Our bodies are programmed to crave these things, as in the sugars and the sugars and fats are present in the human diet, and our bodies are programmed to crave these things. But what has changed is the modern processing, stripping our foods of the fiber and the nutrients, leaving the concentrated levels of sugars and the refined flour and the unhealthy fats. Today I will inform you the effects highly processed foods have on our bodies, such as the impairment of memory, addiction, and weight gain. When we eat, hormones are released in our brains, and they travel to the hippocampus and hypothalamus. As you can see, they're highlighted in red. These two areas promote nervous system activity, which lead to memory and learning. According to Forbes.com, brain cells need 2 times the amount of energy needed by all other cells in the body. This is roughly 10% of our daily intake. Energy is derived from glucose or blood sugar. You can think of this as gasoline for our brains. Research done at UCLA has shown a diet high in processed sugar decreases the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. This is also called BDNF. Without BDNF, our brains are unable to form new memories and are unable to learn properly. Eating foods high in fat dulls the mind and clouds the thinking. This takes blood away from the brain, which as I told you earlier, takes 10% of our blood and of our energy, and this goes to the digestive system. And as a result, the thinking process becomes slower, and we cannot learn properly. As you can see, processed foods cause our brains to be deprived of vital nutrients. Next, I would like to point out that these foods can be as addictive as cocaine. Here's some brain scans from people. Here's a normal brain, a brain of an obese person, cocaine user, and brain of an alcoholic. And here are the reward center colors located on the left-hand side for you, and they tell you what each color represents. Constant stimulation with caloric-loaded foods may desensitize the brain's circuitry, leading people to consume greater amount of calorie-loaded foods. This makes them want to contain a more pleasurable state. David Ludwig, a Harvard researcher, claims highly processed foods may cause rapid spikes and declines in blood sugar. This increases the cravings for the high sugar foods. In 2010, there's a study at Scripps Research Institute. They fed rats an array of sugary and fatty foods, including Hormel bacon, Cheesecake Factory cheesecake, and Pillsbury frosting. This study measured the pleasure and reward centers in the rats' brains, and when the rats were given these sugary, high-fat foods for an hour and the nutrient foods were available to them all day, they started binge eating for that hour that it was available to them. When the other set of rats that were given the sugary high-fat foods for 18 to 23 hours per day, they actually became obese instead of eating the nutrient foods that were available to them all day again. So the results produce the same brain pattern that occurs with the escalating intake of cocaine. Researchers are finding that the damage to the brain circuitry, or the reward centers, may occur when people eat excessive quantities of food. With the dependencies of high sugary foods, one can only deduce that it also leads to weight gain. Processed foods high in simple carbs Processed foods, often high in simple carbs, contribute to easy digestion. Sugar, they turn into sugar and they are digested so fast that it makes you feel hungrier, and that's what makes you eat more. When you go to a fast food restaurant and you order something, and you go to McDonald's and you order, McChicken. How many McChickens do you eat? 2, 3, 4, 5. I've now known somebody that eats 4. Well, it's because that there isn't enough nutrients in there, so you don't feel full. Darlene Kvist, she's a licensed nutritionist. She stated that processed carbs are the #1 culprit for weight gain and for a slow metabolism. There is a study in the New England Journal of Medicine that tracked 121,000 men and women for 20 years. Each person was met with for 4 years, every 4 years. The average weight gain was 3.35 pounds over a 4-year period, and almost 17 in the 20 years. The people that made the most unhealthiest choices, like decreased physical activity and the increased caloric intake, gained more than 4 pounds than the normal people. To conclude, a diet high in processed foods has shown an impairment of memory, addiction, and an increase in weight gain. I would like to quickly show you what I mean by processed. As you can see, they take our foods from the most natural state, and they strip all of the nutrients out of them to create this, the most unhealthy, unnutrient. There's no nutrients in them. It's just left out. It's left out. This is what we are eating. So as you can see, these foods are taken so far from the natural state. And I would like to leave you with something that I have figured out about 2 years ago. We all have choices in life, and we all know the consequences of our choices. Just because we can't physically see the destruction that processed foods are doing to our bodies doesn't mean that we should ignore and indulge. Happy eating.
Has anyone captivated anybody with their words or their charisma, the way they speak? There we go. Okay. When we get through, it's not an easy task, but when you have that ability, it's an amazing accomplishment when you can stand up in front of somebody and just speak, not even be fully prepared, like the speeches we're probably going to be doing pretty soon, where we're going to have to talk 2 minutes about something that we've had about 5 minutes to look at. But when we have that ability, it's going to be great. But public speaking has been used throughout history by several different leaders. Martin Luther King with his I Have a Dream speech, the inaugural speeches that our presidents give. And then there's also with Abraham Lincoln's speech with the Gettysburg Address. And then Nelson Mandela's I Am the First Accused. Several different speakers have been throughout the ages, but there's one that was able to captivate an entire country in a very short amount of time. I'm here to inform you about Hitler, Adolf Hitler, and how he was able to use public speaking to capture a country and rise to power despite his lack of morality and then his ideals that were a little bit shaky to some people. But before I get into that, I'm going to go into public speaking and why it's such a powerful skill. Public speaking can be a very powerful skill if you have that ability, but some people are born with that innate ability. And if you have that ability, then you can captivate somebody and then to be an influential speaker, you can captivate someone and then nervousness. With this influential speaking, you can captivate people, and when you get to that point, it can be an enormously powerful skill. And with that pivotal skill, persuasive speaking can also be extremely powerful, not only just normal speaking. Now that we've talked about public speaking, we can move into how Hitler used this skill to raise a country from pretty much below dirt at that point. Adolf Hitler was born Austrian, which is really surprising to some people because he was such an advocate for Germany. But he was born Austrian. He was born a very small and very sickly child. This picture that you see is actually Hitler's on the right. That is one of his lieutenants. He was a very short man. He was a very influential speaker, and despite his less than moral ideals, he was able to captivate a country that was to a point where they were financially in the hole. After World War I, Germany was blamed for everything, and they had to pay armaments to every other country in Europe. The U.S. decided to help out, and we offered them money, but we expected payment almost immediately. So you would see young children playing in the streets with blocks of money as building blocks. As he rose to power, he was able to hold these people to a certain point. As a human, he was a very hated person because of his ideals. But as a speaker, he was strangely admired because of the power of his words. Hitler was a very big fan of Friedrich Nietzsche's book on Übermensch, which is a term that was used as called a superman, not da-da-da-da, the Superman we always know, but a man who was sort of a super being that would usher in a new morality for the country. And Hitler read this book while he was on his own. He was reading it, and he said, that could be me. So he decided to make that a striving. And as he rose to power, he used public speaking in order to rally his people. According to Hitler's Superman, his ideology was the Übermensch was the basis for his ideology of a pure Aryan race, blonde hair, blue eyes, that appealed to a broken country. Like I said before, they were in the hole financially, and morally, there was nothing. They didn't feel like Germans. They didn't feel like anyone. Throughout Berlin and all over Germany, there were loudspeakers and radios. To start with the loudspeakers, the picture on the right is the loudspeakers they were strengthening in East Berlin along the wall. Just imagine, if you can, you would hear the crackling of the loudspeakers and a detached voice saying, "The Führer speaks." And then you would hear a roaring crowd from people, and along the loudspeakers all day had been playing a really loud buzzing noise, designed to agitate people. So all day they were hearing this and didn't know why they were being agitated. But as they were agitated, when Hitler got up to speak, they were already chomping at the bit, waiting for him to speak. They wanted to hear what he had to say. According to Glenn Elliott, a writer for Transfusion Broadcasting System, people in Germany were required to have standard issue Nazi Party radios delivered to each of them, and it was tuned to listen to all of the rally speeches that Hitler had held. He said that there was no escape. There were even loudspeakers all over the place. When he got up to speak, this is a video of one of his speeches it was a rally that he had done. If it'll load. And you see that when these people were standing here and he was giving his speech, he has very strong mannerisms, and he had this way of speaking where he had big gestures, strong gestures, and he had a really loud way of speaking. If it'll load. It's not loading. That's unfortunate. But if you can see the picture here where he is, the video's it's not working right now. But in this picture, it was in the middle of his speech where he was talking about how the Nazi Party was going to be a strong party, and one of its ideologies was going to be the greatest power in the world, and it appealed to everybody, and there was a roar of the crowd. And as he was talking, he was up on his toes, he was tightening his hands, he was making big gestures, his face was sweaty, he was passionate about what he was saying. He appeared passionate, and he was passionate about what he was saying. In conclusion, the public speaking can be a daunting task, but it's not impossible. Each person has their own lead to this, and Hitler used this power to rise to power and led the world to war once again. And words can be is a truly powerful tool, so don't forget that. Thank you.